The Freedmen's Bureau by Trinisha Alford, a student at Liberty University. What do you know about the Freedmen's Bureau? Well, up until this class, I knew absolutely nothing. So let's learn a little bit about the Freedmen's Bureau. This is the official congressional bill, H.R. 613. Today we're going to learn about the history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's begin with the history. Legally, the Freedmen's Bureau began from 1865 to 1872, but in this sense, it really began in 1861 during the Civil War to about 1876, in which it was sought to settle the, at that time, Negro problem in the United States. Fugitive slaves began to rush to the Union lines. At that point, Union soldiers were trying to figure out what to do with these slaves. From there came the Freedmen's Aid Societies, born of the touching appeals for relief and help from these centers of distress. There was the American Missionary Association and other organizations such as the National Freedmen's Relief Association, the American Freedmen's Union, etc. There was about 50 different organizations which sent clothes, money, helps with school, such as with books and teachers. It initially was established, the Freedmen's Bureau, to protect freedmen, lease them lands, adjust their wages, and appear in civil and military courts on their behalf. The Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, often referred to as the Freedmen's Bureau, was established in the War Department by an act. It was enacted March 3rd, 1865. The Bureau supervised all relief and educational activities relating to both refugees and freedmen, including issuing rations, clothing, medicine. They were also given Confederate land that was abandoned or confiscated during the war. This is Major General Oliver O. Howard. He was appointed by Lincoln to be the commissioner of the Freedmen's Bureau. He also became Howard University's president. Howard's headquarters were in Washington, D.C., but the people that worked under him, such as the assistant commissioners, sub-assistant commissioners, and agents, they were spread throughout the Confederate States and into the District of Columbia. The good, as I've mentioned, the Freedmen's Bureau issued rations, helped with abandoned property. Initially, they were supposed to be given 40 acres. They helped to transport freedmen that were in the congested centers, such as where the Union soldiers were. They transported them back to the farms and also integrated schools. As Congress extended the life of the Bureau, it added other duties such as assisting Black soldiers and sailors in obtaining back pay, bounty payments, and pensions. So the importance of the Bureau at that time was to make sure that those African American soldiers at the time were getting the money that was due to them. The greatest success of the Freedmen's Bureau lay in the planting of the school among Negroes or freed blacks, and the idea of free elementary education among all classes in the South. As a HBCU graduate, the Lincoln School, now Alabama State, my alma mater, is here's an example of one of the normal schools. Additionally, this is another state normal school in the state of Mississippi. Did you know that historically black colleges and universities were founded using Bureau funds? So some of the first universities were Fisk, Hampton Institute or Hampton University, Howard University, and Clark University, also known as Clark Atlanta. Now, some of the bad issues that occurred during the time of the Bureau was that there was corruption. Although agents were supposed to be helping the former slaves, oftentimes former slaves would get the bad end of the stick in terms of the benefits that were due to them in terms of when they worked for former white slave owners. Also, former masters of their lands were ordered about, seized, and imprisoned and punished over and over again, which seems like a benefit. However, what would then happen is those former slaves that basically told on them, they were often beaten, intimidated, raped, and butchered by those people who wanted revenge. In addition, those same white men would then use the court systems to their advantage, such as the civil courts, and those civil courts would often punish the freedmen. Its failures were the result of bad local agents, inherent difficulties of the work, and national neglect. The Freedmen's Bureau expired by limitation in 1869, except for the educational and bounty departments, and that ended in 1872. At that time, General Howard's connection with the Bureau ceased. Some other bad attributes were the mishandling of funds. It was also said that the Bureau was used as a tool of Republicans for political gain, trying to get the freedmen to become Republican voters. Did you know that 40 acres and a mule originated because the Freedmen's Bureau wanted to give all freedmen that amount to start their lives after slavery? However, at a certain point of time, they ran out of land. And number two, if you wanted to get the 40 acres and the mule, you had to have the capital to be able to afford it or to be able to purchase the land. The ugly. During this period, U.S. government policy focused upon acquiring Indian lands, restricting cultural and religious practices, and sending Native American children to boarding schools. That sounds like a good thing. However, the Christian organizations promoted rapid assimilation of children through off-reservation Indian boarding schools and immersion in white culture. Additionally, if you were, you would know about the act in which they found out that Indian boarding schools were treating Native American students poorly and had subpar living standards. Did you know that marriages of newly freed freedmen fell under the Bureau's responsibility? So marriages were an example of one of the responsibilities of the Freedmen's Bureau. So to sum it all up, there's a couple of extra points in here. For the positives, it allowed freedmen to acquire land. They often used the land of former slave owners. They were able to get an education. Normal schools were designed, including many HBCUs still in existence. They were able to get married, find missing relatives, and also hospitals were built. The Bureau helped to get soldiers their benefits, and then over $20 million was given out during the existence of the Bureau. Negatives: they did not get the 40 acres and a mule that was once promised to them. Former slave owners were bitter and thus found other ways to harm former slaves, including using civil courts. Many Southerners still believe that freed persons did not need an education, and thus they did whatever they could to not give the organization the money that was allotted to them. And then lastly, the Bureau ended in 1872, leaving many without the rights that protected them initially. So that is the history of the Freedmen's Bureau. Thank you very much. And I hope that you were able to take away some important information about the Freedmen's Bureau.